So, very good morning. So, last class we were looking into the motor system, the physiology of motor system, or the various descending tracts. So, we had completed the pyramidal tracts. Like, as you know, descending tracts are pyramidal tracts and extra pyramidal tracts, and we had looked into the various areas in the motor cortex, like the primary motor cortex, the Brodmann's area number 4. We have looked into the motor homunculus, supplementary motor area, premotor area, Brodmann's area number 6, 8, 44, association areas, and we had looked into the pyramidal tracts. So these are the objectives of the class, last class and today's class, which have merged. So mainly we look into the pathway of pyramidal and extra pyramidal tract, and what are the different types of extra pyramidal tracts, what is upper motor neuron lesion, lower motor neuron lesion, and what's the difference between pyramidal and extra pyramidal tracts. So as this diagram shows, the descending tracts. So these are the pathways by which the motor signals from the brain are sent to the lower motor neuron. So which in turn innervate the skeletal muscle to produce movements. So these are the descending tracts, are classified into pyramidal tracts and extra pyramidal tracts. So the pyramidal tracts are further divided into corticospinal tract and corticobulbar tracts, and these tracts directly innervate the motor neurons of spinal cord or the motor neurons present in the brainstem. If it is a corticospinal tract, they innervate the motor neurons of spinal cord. Whereas if it is a corticobulbar, means they innervate the motor neurons present in the brainstem to the various cranial nerve nuclei. And today's topic will be the extrapyramidal system. So extrapyramidal system, the various tract like reticulospinal tract, vestibulospinal tract, tectospinal tract, olivospinal tract, rubrospinal tract, and so on. So we have looked into already this thing, the upper motor neuron and lower motor neuron. So upper motor neuron, their cell bodies in the cortex, cerebral cortex. Lower motor neuron, their cell bodies in the gray matter of spinal cord or in the brainstem. So these upper motor neurons, they synapse with the lower motor neuron, whereas the lower motor neuron synapse with the muscles in the body, and they are classified according to the pathway they travel, either corticospinal tract or corticobulbar tract, upper motor. So lower motor neuron are divided into two groups of neurons, alpha motor neuron and gamma motor. So upper motor neuron carries information from the higher center, the cerebral cortex, which controls the muscles of the body, whereas lower motor neuron carry the information from the upper motor neuron to the muscles. So this is the upper motor neuron tract. Means upper motor neuron, as already it's known, it is the pyramidal and extrapyramidal tracts. So basically upper motor neuron are pyramidal cells and tracts constitute the upper motor neuron. So as you can see there, the pathway of the pyramidal tract, which we have explained in the last class, it arises from the cerebral cortex and it forms the corona radiata. As I already told about the pyramidal tract, the corticospinal tract, the origin of corticospinal tract, like 30% of the pyramidal tract arise from the motor area number 4, another 30% fibers from the area number 6, 40%, the remaining 40% from the somatosensory area 1 and 2. And the pathway or the course of pyramidal tract, it starts from these areas and then it converges towards the brain stem as a radiating mass, what we call it as corona radiata. From there, it reaches the internal capsule. As you know, internal capsule is a white matter lying between basal ganglia laterally and medially by caudate nucleus and thalamus, and it is a V-shaped structure. So this pyramidal tract, basically it lies in between the genu and the anterior two-third of posteriorly, and from there it goes to the various areas like in the midbrain and to the pons. Inside the pons, these fibers are broken down and they are shattered. And then it enters into the medulla. So whatever that shattered one in the medulla, they all unite and form they produce a separate bulge like pyramid structure. So that's why it is called as pyramidal tract. In the lower part of medulla, these fibers cross like 80 to 85% cross to the opposite side and form lateral corticospinal tract, and remaining 10 to 15% they do not cross and they form the anterior corticospinal tract of uncrossed fibers. So this is which I already told, the corticospinal tract, the origin of corticospinal tract from areas in the cortex. So corticospinal tract, as we know, there are lateral cortex, the function of lateral corticospinal tract, they basically control the fine, discrete skilled movements of fingers and toe, whereas the anterior corticospinal tract control the axial and proximal limb muscle movements, mainly for postural adjustment. So this corticospinal, they generally terminate at the different level in the interneurons of the gray matter, the second at the sensory neurons of the dorsal horn, and terminate directly on the anterior horn cells, anterior motor neurons that cause muscle contraction. So this is the pathway of corticospinal tract, and as you know, lateral corticospinal tract and the other one is anterior corticospinal tract. Lateral corticospinal tract are the crossed or indirect pyramidal tract, whereas the anterior corticospinal tract is uncrossed or direct pyramidal tract. So if you look at phylogenetically, the anterior pathways are old, whereas lateral pathways are new. So, and there is one more uh, thing is there, what you call it as corticobulbar tract. So the corticobulbar tract are also a part of pyramidal tract. So they are also a part of pyramidal tract, and these tract end near the motor neurons that innervates the muscles of eye, face, tongue, and throat. And so these pyramidal fibers, they end on the cranial nuclei, nuclear tract. So lesions. So we have seen already the lesions. What will happen? So now our most important thing is the today's class is extrapyramidal tracts. So extrapyramidal tracts are the these tracts they relay basically in the basal ganglia, red nucleus, and brainstem, and they regulate the activity of ventral horn cells of spinal cord by multisynaptic pathway. So that is the most important thing you need to know. And this system is made up of those areas in the brain that are concerned with muscle movements and posture. And they have many synapses in their descending path with the cells of nuclear mass on their way from the cerebral cortex, basal ganglia, hypothalamus, reticular formation, and so on. Like so, on that basis, so extrapyramidal tract you can see here listed: rubrospinal, vestibulospinal, verticulospinal, tectospinal, olivospinal. So they basically important for postural adjustment, like, and also controls the subconscious gross movement. Like, so we will look at each of these tracks. Like, and before we move to that, one more thing I forgot to tell about this corticobulbar tract. Like, so as or corticonuclear tract. So as I already told, the lesion of the pyramidal tract. So lesion of the pyramidal tract. So it is most common lesion will be at the level of internal capsule due to either thrombosis or emboli or hemorrhage of lenticulostriate artery, which is a branch of middle cerebral artery. So the we call it this as a stroke, means a sudden attack of paralysis, or other name for stroke is apoplexy. Apoplexy or stroke, which means sudden attack of paralysis. So this paralysis can be either hemiplegia, paraplegia, quadriplegia, or monoplegia, and which we have seen already. What is the meaning of hemiplegia? Paralysis of one side of the body. The most commonest cause is injury of pyramidal tract at internal capsule level. Whereas paraplegia means it's a paralysis of both lower limb. Quadriplegia means all the four limb paralysis. So here either a quadriplegia or paraplegia, here there will be injury at the brainstem level, like with the involvement of cranial nerves. Like monoplegia means paralysis of one limb. So here the damage to the areas, say area number 4. Like, so likewise, that is about this pyramidal tract lesion, and means especially corticospinal tract. What is the uh, what will happen if there is a lesion to corticobulbar tracts? So that is which we have told pyramidal tracts are of two types: corticospinal tract and corticobulbar tract. Corticobulbar tract lesion lead to a condition what we call it as pseudobulbar palsy. So this pseudobulbar palsy is a condition resulting in paralysis or weakness of muscle, which controls this your talking or swallowing or lip movements or tongue movements. So due to bilateral lesion of these tracts. Like, so the applied aspect of corticobulbar tract is pseudobulbar palsy. So, and also, and yesterday I already told the difference between pyramidal tract and extrapyramidal tract. Like, also, like, so pyramidal tract lesion generally lead to spasticity in the muscles will involved, whereas extrapyramidal tract lesion lead to rigidity in the uh, muscles involved. So here pyramidal tract axon pass without relaying to the spinal segmental level. So where they form synapse with either interneuron in the dorsal horn or directly with the motor neuron themselves. Whereas extrapyramidal tract forms many synapses in their descending pathway with the cells of nuclei of basal ganglia, hypothalamus, and reticular formation. So this pyramidal tracts, so they have greater influence over the motor neuron that controls the fine movements, whereas extrapyramidal tract mainly involved in the maintenance of posture, locomotion, head, body movements, and so on. Like so, you need to know that is also very important question. Difference between pyramidal and extrapyramidal. Viva question. So now we will look into extrapyramidal tract. Each one of this rubrospinal tract. So rubrospinal tract, as the name suggests, rubrospinal tract. So rubrospinal tract, it originates from the red nucleus. So red nucleus in the midbrain tegmentum, which is connected by the fibers with the cerebral cortex. So this red nucleus, so this rubrospinal tract, it originates from the red nucleus located in the brain's midbrain, crosses immediately to the opposite side, means deposit at the level of red nucleus. Some fibers end in cerebellum, so this tract does not extend below the thoracic side. So what will happen? They pass through the pons, medulla, end in the anterior horns of the spinal cord, and some fibers also end in the cerebellum, and these tract does not extend below the thoracic region. So what is the function of this? So this tract, cortico-rubrospinal pathway, serves as an accessory route for transmission of relatively discrete signal from motor cortex to the spinal cord. Basically, they are facilitatory influence over flexor muscle tone. So basically, they are influence over the flexor muscle tone, like rubrospinal tract, like so. The next tract is the vestibulospinal tract. So this is a very important tract which arises from the vestibular nuclei. So which arises from the vestibular nuclei. So there are two tracts: lateral vestibulospinal tract and medial vestibulospinal tract. So the one, so they origin from the vestibular nucleus located at the junction of pons and medulla. So these fibers arises from the vestibular nucleus in the pons, and they descend in the ipsilateral, like so it is the ipsilateral, and it receives also fibers from the vestibular division of the eighth cranial nerve. So there are two divisions, lateral and medial division. They descend uncrossed. That's why it is the, so they descend in an ipsilateral way, like means they are uncrossed. They are uncrossed throughout the entire length of the spinal cord. Throughout the entire length of the spinal cord. So what is the function of this? So one is excitatory to ipsilateral signals that is supplying to axial and postural muscle, regulates the posture and writing reflex, controls eye movement. So these are things which are important for this reticulospinal tract. So basically, it has got facilitatory influence on reflex activity in the spinal cord and upon mechanism which controls muscle tone, like especially extensor group, the anti-gravity group of muscles. The next vestibulospinal pathway in detail, like two divisions, lateral vestibulospinal and medial vestibulospinal. So lateral vestibulospinal origin from the lateral vestibular nucleus. They descend uncrossed or ipsilateral whole length on the like ventral white column of the spinal cord, whereas the medial, like it arises from medial vestibular nucleus. These also descend ipsilaterally in the ventral white column of the spinal cord, and they form a part of what we call it as medial longitudinal fasciculus fibers in the brainstem that link with the vestibular nuclei to the nucleus supplying the extraocular muscles. So they form a part of medial longitudinal fasciculus, and which links the vestibular nucleus to the extraocular muscles. So what is the function of this lateral vestibular vestibulospinal pathway? Excitatory influence upon the extensor motor neuron to maintain the posture, whereas the medial coordination of head and eye movements. Right? So what is the role of vestibular nuclei to excite the anti-gravity muscles? So these at the vestibular nucleus function is in association with the pontine reticular nuclei to control the anti-gravity muscle. So this vestibular nuclei function and the reticular formation are closely linked. They work together in the control of anti-gravity muscle. So the vestibular nuclei transmit excitatory signal to the anti-gravity muscle by lateral and medial vestibulospinal tract in the anterior column of the spinal cord. Without this support, the pontine reticular system would lose much of excitation of the axial anti-gravity muscle. So the specific role of vestibular nuclei, however, um, in selective control of excitatory signals to anti-gravity muscle, even to maintain equilibrium in response to the signal from the vestibular apparatus. Like basically, as I told, vestibulospinal tract is involved in the excitation of the anti-gravity muscle, means facilitatory influence on the reflex activity in the spinal cord, especially control the muscle tone of extensor group of muscle, that is the anti-gravity group of muscles. So how it basically achieves is through the uh, association between the vestibular nucleus and the reticular formation, pontine reticular nuclei. Like because of this association connection between the vestibular nuclei and the pontine reticular nuclei through these tracts, lateral and medial vestibulospinal tract. So next is tectospinal or tectobulbar. So they arise from the superior and inferior colliculi of the brainstem. So superior and inferior colliculi near the medial longitudinal fasciculus, they end on the contralateral cervical motor neurons. They end on the cervical, they descend up to lower cervical region. So what is the main function? Is to mediate reflex, postural reflex in response to visual and auditory stimuli. So example, hearing the sound from a TV, or you move your head to it. So when you hear a sound in TV, what you do, your head will move towards to view that what is the sound that is being heard in the TV. Like so, next is the reticulospinal tract. So reticulospinal tract, they origin from the neurons of the reticular formation area in the pons and medulla. So there are two divisions: pontine reticulospinal tract, medullary reticulospinal tract. So this both pontine and medullary nuclei projects to the anterior horn cells of the spinal cord via the reticulospinal tract. Basically, as I told, like they have the medial division and lateral division. So basically, what is the function of this is to facilitate or inhibit voluntary movement, mainly influencing the gamma motor neuron. So mainly influencing the gamma motor neuron, or alteration of muscle tone, or respiration, or blood pressure. So basically, they influence the motor function as voluntary or reflex movement. Either it has got excitatory influence or inhibitory influence on muscle tone, mainly influence the gamma motor neuron, and it will alter the muscle tone, or can alter the respiration or blood pressure. reticulospinal tract. So as the name, the two division, lateral reticulospinal tract and medial reticulospinal tract. So lateral reticulospinal tract is arising from the pontine reticular